welcome to your Daily Game Face. I'm Dr. Kim Lannon, and I'm here with not so good mood Lou. Did you like that?
Yeah. Well, you know how it is.
Do I?
Yeah, you do, because your business is kind of similar. You have like 20 bosses.
Well, no, I have no bosses.
Okay, yeah. But
I have me as a boss. Well, I actually do. Yes, I work for my clients.
exactly.
But it's not quite the same as you.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, you're in a bad mood today.
There's a lot going on.
I understand. Okay.
And we're late.
Well, you know why we're late? Because I was in the parking lot dealing with an issue. How's that?
It's fine.
I was dealing with an issue that has to do with psychological and physical things about taking medication for weight loss. Not me,
Oh, God.
but I'm going to talk about it today because actually I'm going to talk about it. But I'm actually talking about something totally different today. So I'm not starting with that unless you want me to, and then just get it out of the way.
No, it's fine.
So are you okay?
No, it's just you brought up I had a run-in with my physician's assistant yesterday. So.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should start with that. So I'm going to start with that, but I don't want to take up my whole show talking about that because I have very pressing issues that have come up. Okay. This is a pressing issue, but this is more a common issue that's come up because of the weight loss drugs. That's multiply a problem. Okay. So for the listener who I was just on the phone with, who has given me permission.
Abby wants to know if she's the issue.
She's the issue, Abigail. So Abby's the issue. So Abby, who is giving me permission to talk about this, she is utilizing this avenue to help herself.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And so when Abby started, Abby loved me. Remember this. When Abby started, she went one direction and at the beginning, she tried to bypass the shot. Like I've talked about, right, on the show. Like people try to bypass and think, I can eat whatever, right? And then it's going to lose weight. And we were really inching along. But then that really frustrated her and me. So we had lots of conversations that were good, bad, and indifferent, right, Abs? And then we went to the other extreme, which is so this is generalizable to many people. This is what I deal with in my practice as well. Then we went to the other extreme, and she kind of went underground and slipped away from all of our purview, and her doses were increasing. And as they were increasing over the last 2 weeks, she decided that she was going to stop eating.
Oh.
So what was it? Says what? Monday morning, I get a phone call because she's in the ER because she's 90/60 in her blood pressure and her sugar's at 45. This is one of the problems. Suboptimal, right? Yeah. Not optimal. So this is one of the problems, not because of the shot, but because of people's. I mean, the shot certainly can cause that. Notice my face. It's more about what people are doing around the shot. Yeah. The shot specific. So the shot, for people that have no idea what I'm talking about, is Wegovy, Ozempic, tirzepatide, Zepbound, Saxenda, things like that, right? So they're either the SLP ones, the semaglutides, or the tirzepatides, the ones that are in the GLP ones. And what it's doing, for quick reference, is that it is rewiring your brain to go back to its original set point that you have either restricted it into because you didn't eat, it would be not a reason why you'd be on the shot, or it helps you to regulate it to where you're supposed to not be hungry because you've trained your brain to be eating all the time, not because you're hungry, because you eat all the time, right? Which is why people get overweight. They have, obviously there's emotional problems, all the things you have to work on underneath, but the actual eating habit is that you just keep eating, you just keep feeding yourself, right? So what the GLP ones and the SLP ones, in short, and I'm doing a very dirty version of this, is it brings it down to a level of rewiring the brain to say, you have a set point weight, you're way beyond it, we need to bring you back to it. In order to do that, it's going to make you not want to eat. That doesn't mean you don't eat. Right. Yeah. You have to maintain 700 to 1,200 calories a day, optimally, to be in there. Well, Abby was doing, I'm going to guess her point was that she was doing like 300 calories. I'm going to go with maybe 100, maybe calories. So thanks, Abby, for letting me share your story and giving me permission to do that. But so right now we're talking about, and she's talking with her her other parts of her team talking about how she had the doctor at the emergency room. We had to laugh. The doctor at the emergency room said, I don't understand why you would restrict. And she's like, because I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
I mean, so she's bypassing it the other way. What'd she say?
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for making my show. So some doctors who don't really know a lot about what this is and not doing weight loss with their clients, or they just don't understand. So her feedback was on her sheet. It comes back with, because she was so sick, it just said viral infection, which she didn't have a viral infection. That was the diagnosis. And I'm like, oh my God. And then underneath it, it was like nothing to do with anything related to,
Really?
yeah. And the doctor knew. And then, so she and I had a good laugh about it, because the doctor just looked at her and said, well, why would you do that? She's like, because I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
So we had a laugh about the fact that her doctor, it's not even her doctor, it was the emergency room doctor just being sort of clueless.
Gives you an idea how much more powerful the emotional aspect of this is than the physiological aspect of it.
Right. So this was my point to her, and is that it's not really about what the shot's doing. It's about what you're emotionally doing.
Yeah.
If you're able to restrict it back on top of it already not allowing you to feel hungry, then you've got a lot more control over it than you thought you did. Right. So it's really about, the shot doing what it's supposed to, but then you have to just still eat, 700 calories a day. And I think what people, and this isn't just abs, this is people in general, will feel like, I'm not hungry, so I don't want to eat. So they don't eat. But I say, you don't have to sit down. And if you're used to like sitting down, eating like 6 or 7 or 10 ounces of steak, and then a potato, and then, all this other stuff and dessert, your body's not meant to do that. What your body's meant to do is eat like 3 ounces or 4 ounces of a piece of protein, lots of veggies or whatever, and then like a sweet potato or some quinoa or some brown rice or some wild rice. It's not meant to gorge itself. So you might only get, 2 or 3 ounces of steak. You might only get a couple bites of rice. But then your body is at least fueling. And then maybe in an hour or two, you have another thing. So it's about really getting to those calories, but it's not about starving yourself. So if you're actively starving yourself while the body is going into starvation mode because it's allowing you to not feel hungry, that you're actually doing it. And if you're going the other extreme, which she started with, which was, I can eat anything I want, because that was the messaging she was getting from certain people, that was not allowing her to listen to the cue that the shot was doing. So it's a balance. People have this thing that it's a quick fix. I'm not talking about Abby. I'm talking about people in my practice and in the world doing this. They think it's a quick fix. I don't have to do the work, right? And it's really not about that. You have to actively be engaged in the process of, okay, I have to get up, I have to have a breakfast, I have to have a lunch, and I have to have a dinner. And whatever that looks like, it will be tailored to you. So some of my clients have no problem with this. They don't have the Abby issue where it's like, okay, I'm eating, I don't want to eat and I don't eat anything. They don't feel hungry, but then they'll eat and not have a problem. But she's eating and then feeling sick from it. And so she restricted herself. So now she's got her body's in big flux, because, she was dehydrated because she wasn't drinking water. She was her belief system, which is many people's, is if I drink water, I'll gain weight. No, water actually makes you lose weight. But people think if I drink water, it'll make me heavier. It'll make me weigh more on the scale. That is not true. Not true. It's the more water you drink, the more you flush yourself, the more you hydrate, the more likely you're able to contain yourself in terms of your weight. And you have your body's supposed to be water. So it's homeostasis for what you're doing for food. So the reason why I was late this morning is because I was on the phone with crisis management Abigail.
More overemphasis on the scale itself in this whole process.
Right. I've told her, and I tell all my clients, and I had this conversation yesterday with someone that I'm doing this with, is that it's emotionally not about the number on the scale right now. It's about, how do you feel? Are you healthy choice making? Are you exercising? Are you doing strength training? Are you in a calorie deficit enough, but yet eating enough? Those are they're factors very specific to how to make this work. And there's 5 of them, which I've listed before in previous shows about that. It's not about just taking the shot and then winging it. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
People are doing it. And then I'm actually getting ready to do a TikTok today about this, because I had 3 people ask me, because they're ready to come off of it in their minds, and they're worried about going back up on weight. And I had one person already stop on theirs because they came to their weight, and they've been at their weight for about 6 months, and they want to come off of it. And they did, this one person, and they started popping weight back on. And I know why. And so my TikTok today is going to be about, do you want to know why? And and there's a reason why. And you can make, the question is, can you sustain your weight once you come off of it that you've gotten to? Yes, you can, but you got to do those 5 things, because if you don't do those 5 things while you're on the shot, you're not going to do them after. And therefore you're going to go right back up to the 100 pounds you lost plus.
Because the shot is dealing with the symptom, not the issue.
Right. So the shot deals with the symptom completely, which is the weight problem. And then the thing that drives the weight problem, which is emotional eating out of the ALT, right? Not out of hunger, halt, anger, loneliness, tired, hunger, anger, loneliness, tiredness, right? And all the ALTs are on the continuum of whatever those things are. But if people are not training themselves to eat out of hunger, which the shot is training your brain to do, and you don't do the physical and behavioral strategies that I give you, or any other doctor doing this in psychology, or your dietitian, your nutritionist, your weight management person, whatever, if you're not doing those psychological factors and the behavioral physical factors to maintain it, good luck.
Yeah.
It's coming back, because it's not about weight loss. It's about lifestyle. You must have a lifestyle that supports a healthy weight, not about a number on the scale. And people get so caught up in, I got to be 120 pounds. I got to be 120 pounds. Okay. But you're going to do bad things to get there.
And people who go to medical assisted weight loss are particularly susceptible to that, because they don't want to do the lifestyle choice. That's why they're going to medically assisted.
Right. Well, and
generally speaking, it's generalization, of course.
See, she just said, I like seeing the number drop like it was. She dropped fast, like when she started restricting, and then she avoided me, by the way. She avoided me like the plague, because she didn't want me to know she went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, the number will drop when you restrict, but then you are 90/60 in your blood pressure and 45 in your sugar, and you're going to go into cardiac arrest. Hair. Cat hair. Thank you.
Yep.
I live with cats. Which is what I tell people all the time is, it's not the shot, it's you will put yourself there. You can put yourself in those positions. Could the shot do it? Sure. But it's not like, it's more likely that what you're doing, you have to be doing the right things. Right. So going back to what you just said, what did you just say to me? I wasn't really paying attention
to people who go to medical assisted weight loss are pre-qualified with that issue, because if they were able to do the lifestyle change, they wouldn't be seeking out medical assisted weight loss. So
I'm going to give you a knockback on that one just a little bit, because I'm going to say that yes, some people are not wanting, it's not that they're willing. It's not that they're not wanting to do that piece. But when you come to me, you have to do the work, because I make people have to do the work first, or at least be doing the work heavily. Yeah. And then if they're not doing it, I'm like, what are we doing? But most weight loss clinics or most weight loss places are very much talking about that you must be doing these factors. Not all of them talk about like the strength training piece, because I'll tell you why I put that in and why it's so important. But most of them talk about the sleep, hydration, and walking or running or swimming or doing like at least 3 of the 5 that I give. They're pushing that heavily because they know, and eating the right calories and the right foods, right? Very specifically. I do know of one place that has told people that they can eat whatever they want in terms of the foods, but they have to stay in the calorie range. And I'm like, I have one client that goes to this place. I'm like, this is incorrect information.
Yeah.
A donut for 500 calories is not worth your time when you could eat 2 meals that would fill you up with protein and vegetables over the day than having a donut, right? So there's, and you're going to have places like that. So if that's what the doctors are telling you at that place that you go to, that's not, because that's not, you can't come off the drugs that you're on and then think that you're going to be able to maintain on a donut diet.
Right. Yeah.
Because that weight's coming right back on, right? I mean, it just makes sense, but people are so in the moment of, oh, I can still eat all this stuff, but that's not how it works. Yeah. No, it doesn't. So the psychological piece really is so important. And the psychological piece comes in the behavioral aspects. It's not just mental stuff and mind stuff. It's about Sleep equals psychological wellness. Strength training equals psychological wellness. Working out doesn't mean you have to go, be a bodybuilder. It means you walk. Now we know that 250 minutes a week, in the most recent study I've read from 2024, I think it might have been at the end of 2023, but it's been published now this year. We know that 250 minutes a week of intentional, not NEAT, right? Not the non-exercise activity, thermal, right?
Yep.
Intentional exercise. So take 7 days, divide it into 250. 250 minutes of intentional movement of walking, running, biking, hiking, swimming is going to maintain your ability to do this work, whether you're on the shot or not. People should have that. We know that. And that's for serotonin and dopamine and GABA release and all the things that are healthy for you, right? So that's mental health as well. Then we have the nutritional pieces. A donut's going to make your frontal lobe zippity doo-dah versus, are we having protein? Are we having good antioxidants in our vegetables? Yep. Are we doing everything we're doing has to do with our reciprocity back and forth in our mental health work. So, but if you're not getting guided to do that and you're just being like given a medication and say, here you go. That's like same thing I liken it to with diabetes. People get insulin dependent, or they get metformin, or they get whatever they're given, and nobody educates them about, you don't have to do this if you do these other things eventually. But people don't do that. And so there's a mental health aspect that's so important to this. And you have to find a good provider. If you go to a weight loss clinic or you go to your primary care and they have a weight loss program in there, make sure it has someone that's doing all of these things with you. The reason why, and I want to circle back, the reason why you have to strength train when you're doing this, that doesn't mean you're building muscle like a bodybuilder. It means you're toning as you go, because people who are losing 100 or more pounds, or even 50 or more pounds, if they're not doing some light bodybuilding type moves, which is, here's, if you can see me, 5 pounds of fat is this big, 5 pounds of muscle is this big. So I'd rather have 5 pounds of muscle than 5 pounds of fat, because it takes up less space.
Yep.
So the only way to get there is you have to be, as you're dropping incrementally in your weight, you have to be toning. So it shrinks everything in, so that at the end, if you do have a lot of overage of skin, or you have that flabbiness that's left over, which is going to happen, you're not as likely to have as much, because some people are like, they will have to go have surgery to have a lot of it removed, because people are so heavy. If you're 700 or 800 pounds, or if you're like 300 or 400 on a 5'2" frame, you're going to probably have to have removed. But it's way easier on your body if you're actually doing some strength training, which is just, some bicep curls, some triceps, some ab work, some planking, getting strong enough so that you can maintain the fact that you've just dropped 17 bags of potatoes off your body. So these are all factors that go into it. But going back to Abby's issue is that you can't bypass it by going around it and overeating on it and being like, I can eat whatever I want, because that's going to get you in trouble, because then you're not going to drop weight. And then when you come off it, you're just going to pop on double, using that lightly. Or you go the other side, restricting, you're going to give yourself cardiac arrest. And you can give it on both sides on this. Yeah. And people don't realize that, because no one's telling them that. And if they are telling them that, they're not paying attention. But more often than not, I hear people come into, I have minus Abby, who's in my personal life, I have 13 clients now on medication, and one who's come off of it, and all are successful. And then I have people doing it without. I have several people in my practice that are just doing it just the typical general way, going very successfully as well.
Yeah.
Because they're doing those 5 things and they don't need the shot, because they feel they don't need the shot. That's their choice. There's nothing wrong with using the medication, but know that if you do not make the lifestyle changes that come with the use of the medication, you're going to be in trouble when you come off of it. I mean, I've had multiple people say, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to come off of it, because I just can't manage the lifestyle holding it together without this. So to each their own, but I just want to make sure that people know that you cannot bypass and have it work, and you cannot restrict and have it work, because it's going to make you sick.
There are 2 issues with weight training that people, I think, run into. One is similar to Abby's, where they get stuck on the scale.
Right.
And weight training might put a pound or 2 back on.
Okay, but that's so yes. So I'm going to answer that.
It's better, of course.
So a pound or two. So it's not likely if you're at a high weight, we don't have to worry about pounds of weight coming on in muscle mass to take over and become a weight a number on the scale when you're at a heavy weight like that, because you're dropping. It's when you're down. Say you start
at your plateau.
Right. So say you're at 300 pounds and you get down to 150. At 150, then we start considering, not worrying, but considering that we're going to be mindful of what kind of weight you're putting on weightlifting, which is why we don't go into bulking, and we don't, because that's not what you want, right? Because then if you do gain weight back, you're going to be bulkier, right? So we're not worried as much about that at the dropping zone of weight loss. We're looking to tone. So that means, lighter weight, higher reps, more sets, just to have the burn, because we need muscle to burn fat. And when people are not doing any kind of strength training, muscle, it goes into getting eaten, and your muscle mass drops, and then you don't have enough to support the weight loss. And now you look really like, you've seen people, there's people that you can see on TV that are using it, that are not admitting that they're using it, but you can tell the difference, that they're not working. You can tell they're not working out per se, because they get very forlorn long looking. Their body looks droopy long, like they're melting. That's often how I can tell if someone's on it and they're not doing the things, because they're not, I can tell. And so it's not about weight gain.
Right. But you got to let go of the scale.
You got to let go of the scale initially. If you're trying to lose 100 pounds, most people are trying to at least lose 100 pounds most of the time. 50 to
that's a different issue. Yeah.
Right. But okay, so say 50. So even that, you got to let go of the scale number until we really get close to what we want. And then we have to tweak it at that point. But initially, you just have to do those 5 things. It's 5 things.
And the issue I had, and I don't know if that relates to more weight loss than I went through, but when you work out more, you want more calories.
Right. So it's interesting. There's some really good research. If you are a runner, you will want less calories than if you are a walker. So note to self for people who are, so if you're just if you're just walking, right? And you walk a couple miles a day, or 3-4, you're going to be more hungry doing that, because you're getting a longer time of movement, and our research shows us that you're more apt to be hungrier if you're walking than if you are running.
Interesting.
It does not suppress the same way running or swimming does. So, but there's recent research on that. So if people are interested in that and would like to know that, I can certainly provide that. But you can look it up. I mean, it's there. It's not like it's some secret squirrel knowledge. It's there. So just so that you know. Okay, so let me see. Question: how does the weight loss medication work with medical cannabis for pain? Cannabis gives you the munchies. So typically medical cannabis, in my experience, anecdotally, with my clients that use medical marijuana, they do not report, and I've asked this many times, if they have the same thing for munchies per se as people who use recreational. They report that they do not have the same type of munchie. So I don't have any, I'm trying to think right now, because I don't know the answer to that from a clinical standpoint, from research. I'm just trying to think that I don't have anyone currently using medical marijuana and on the shot at the same time. Okay. So I can't answer that from an anecdotal. My educated guess would be that I'm thinking that it would probably be more likely that the person will not eat as much, even if they were using the medical marijuana, if they were on an SLP1 or GLP1, because it just won't allow you to want the food.
Yeah.
Even if, because it's, so the CBD, cannabinoid, the THC receptors in the brain, there's a CBD1 and CBD2. One is for the THC. They're not going to be in the same working mode as what we're doing with the GLP and the SLP ones, which is going to the hypothalamus. Now I'm getting really technical neurologically, but it's not going to have that same thing. So when that medication works, I don't think, and I could be wrong, and please correct me if I am out there in the world, I don't think that they will interact in that way, because those medications that you're on will make it, you just don't want that. So you're less likely anyway. But
are there different offerings of medical cannabis that one might be more
they're
susceptible to that?
They're not to my knowledge, because medical marijuana that's made for either pain management or sleep management or stress and anxiety, everybody that has used them, I have to say that I can't give you personal experience, because I actually have never used marijuana. So I'm probably the only one in the world. But I have been reported many times over the years of medical marijuana use that is not a thing.
Yeah.
So I can only go on what my patients tell me, and it's consistent. It's not just like one trying to snow me and saying like, it's consistent over all of my patients. And I have quite a few patients who use that. I have lots of veterans who have issues. I have cancer patients who have issues that use it, and I still don't have that report back. And I check in with that kind of information. So, but certainly now I'm going to be very interested. So of course I'm going to go try to find this information out to see if there's any actual, and I'll come back with that information. So, hopefully this was helpful for people on that front today, because it was an impromptu, and because Abby's having an issue.
Got to go with it.
Mm-hmm. But I do love it when people do say, I can have permission to talk about them. And since she's not a patient and she's in my family, I can say. So, and it's important that we don't restrict, because 90 over 60 and 45. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no.
And I love how the doctor was like, why would you do that? I'm like, oh, why would you do that? She's laughing because the doctor came in and she's like, shh. And then the doctor left and she's like, he asked me, why would I do that? She's like, because I want to lose weight. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not how we're doing it. It goes against everything. So anyway, no restricting. Okay.
I'm having trouble with the whole 700 or 800 calories. I don't think I could do 700 or 800 calories.
Well,
although the medication probably helped me.
Yeah. So the medication allows it so that you won't want it. That's not optimal, right? It's still not, but not
a lot of calories.
But when you're losing, like Dr. Now, if you watch 600 Pound Life, he keeps you to like 1,000 calories. And so the weight loss clinics and your primary cares and the standard, the practice that, in terms of what I know and what I do in my, integrative work for mental health, is that we keep it between 700 and 1,200. So if 1,200 helps you, so 700 you want to at least hit because of the Abby issue. We'll call it the Abby effect. Abby, we named it after you. So we
this is with medically assisted.
This is with medically assisted treatment. This is not normal. This is not in the normal population. This is in medical assisted treatment for SLP1s and GLP1s.
Because 1,200 even seems...
1,200 is really common for regular people, for people who are trying to lose weight. Men are going to be a little bit higher, 16 to 1,800 typically, but women are around 1,200 for without the medication. Mm-hmm. But the 700 is just to make sure that when people are first on the shots, because it restricts your brain from wanting to just do the snacking and the picking, all the habituated, just mindless eating.
Right.
So it keeps you in that mind that you must get to 700 or else you'll end up in Abby world, Abby effect. And then if you don't, and if you do get there, you can get up to 1,200. But once you start crossing over that, like in general world of this for men and women, you start going into a place where then you won't have enough calorie deficit. And the reason why is because if you're not an exerciser and you're not moving, your body will sit in its homeostasis of going nowhere.
Yeah.
So
you're going to burn less than 2,000 a day.
Right. So then you don't have the calorie deficit.
Right.
And then, so you have to meet at least 700 so you don't have the Abby. I love this. This is going to be the best thing. Abby, I love you. Thank you for giving me this. You're going to be written in my book as the Abby effect. And then if you get over that, you want to just maintain to 1,200 and no more, because if not, then you're going to have the other problem, which is what she started with.
She just had a cheese stick. So.
Oh God, don't throw up. She was telling me earlier that she was going to throw up. So, right.
All kinds of fun.
I know. Okay. Abby's experience is not the norm, by the way. So Abby's an anomaly on the board just because she's a wackadoo and said with love. I can share. Oh, good. I can share the income with you. Yeah. Well, okay, Ab. Well, just if you do the whole thing right now and you get back on board and you're not doing the two opposite ends of this spectrum, maybe you'll get $1. You got to try not to die on me first with your sugar dropping to 45 and being at a 90 over 60. She's stressful.
Yeah.
It's like having 4 children at once. Let's see. She opened the door for me to talk about her. I love this. Anyway. Okay. So I'm going to move along to the actual topic of the day that was going to start my show.
Yep.
Okay. So we've had a lot going on in this country.
Yes, we do.
Okay. And no, you're lovely, Abby. She said, hey, I'm not that bad. So first of all, this is for you.
Am I going to get lectured?
You're going to get lectured first. First of all, you know that I don't talk about politics.
Yep.
as politics ever. Even with clients, I don't. I'll listen, but I never give input. I don't have a side. I'm always neutral, as you know. I didn't say with you personally. I'm talking about, you are okay. So awful.
Yep.
I'm not talking about what you and I do off air. That's friendship, and that's different.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in my clinical practice and on air here. That is not my place because it's not my place.
Fair enough.
It's not my place to talk about your belief, your not belief, it doesn't matter what I believe. It really doesn't in clinical work. That's like on anything that we talk about. So I want to make sure that's clear to you before you start going.
Okay. Because I don't have to go.
But I'm saying that because I know I've said
and in fact, I'm actively trying to suppress going.
Oh my God. I know that I can see it in your face.
No, I mean just in general in life.
Okay. Well, let's hold it together.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's some serious topics that have come up that actually, so this is what happens. So in my practice, I have people will bring in, and I air quote, political things that are bothering them, but they know I won't talk about my politics because that's irrelevant. It's not about, I always say, how is my opinion about this going to help you? Like, what does that do? But some people really want to know, and I still don't tell them. And they think they know because I won't tell them. They assume what I am and
disagree.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't go there. But people do bring in that as a thing in their life and in the past. And it happens all the time, especially when we flare up in the country about things and things that impact people like education, abortion, marriage rights, LGBT, these are all psychological things that impact people in my practice and in the mental health world. But a couple in the past 2 weeks have come up because of the climate of things that have happened. And I thought they were worthy of making sure that accurately, at least I'm reporting out that and it will sound probably like I'm going to disagree with somebody's rantings in their writings and their talking, but that's fine because it's inaccurate information. And that's one of the things that drives people's unhealthiness in their worries. And there's 2 issues that I was going to bring up today that came up over the past week. And a client yesterday who's actually training to be in the field, she and I were talking about this particular issue because she was concerned about it. And then it prompted me to say, oh God, I've had a whole bunch of people actually talking about this recently. So in mental health, when I do my work, I often have domestic violence survivors or people who are currently in domestic violence situations. Now, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily all being beaten, but it's emotional abuse, sexual, like coercion happening in the marriage. Like it's a broad spectrum of what abuse looks like in marriages. Most of the time it's men towards women, unfortunately, but there is the reverse as well. But I'm making sure I'm generally speaking here. But by and large, it's men towards women in typical heterosexual relationships. It does happen in LGBTQ plus relationships as well. And this will stand for the same thing, what I'm talking about, because the research, and I'm not speaking just from anecdotal evidence, this is research-based, research-backed, is that the one of the big questions that has come up that's going to be a hot topic, I believe, is that I have clients that are in really tough situations at their homes and they're getting divorced or they're going to try to be getting divorced because they're maneuvering a very delicate situation, have children. And so the topic is that there's a concern that marriage and divorce is going to be made harder for people because certain people have said, and I have the quote here in case we need to go there, that if, and it's written, that if people have it hard, essentially, I'm paraphrasing it now, but if they have it hard, and that could be violent, and that was what was said. Yeah, it could be violent, but we just don't have to have an easy way out for people to get out. we know that the mortality rate of women who cannot have easier access to getting out of a marriage that's violent in any way, the mortality rate goes up and the death rate goes up. When we put into place ability for a female or a male to walk away from a relationship that is not healthy, that is hurting them, that is bad and toxic for them, and now we're not talking even with the children in there, the mortality rate goes up. And if you go back 30, 40, 50 years ago, and you compare the literature from the research back when divorce was harder, divorce laws were very strict, the stigma about divorce was there, the problems societally, sociologically, and psychologically on women was bad. And I could get into all the numbers. So that's a concern. And then we add children in. And so this is where we were talking about yesterday. When you add children in, the stance being put out right now is, from some people, is that children are not worse off by staying in families that stay together, even in domestic violence situations. This is not a truism. This is not true. We know sociologically and psychologically that the research time and again bears out that divorce in and of itself is always hard on children. However, domestic violence, violence in the home, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, any of those things, we know that it's more of a healthy situation for there to be a divorce or a separation out from that situation for children than to maintain a relationship for the sake of maintaining it for the children, because the psychological damage is enormous on children in those situations when they stay together. And it's just a bad idea. And if we make the laws harder and more difficult for people to get out of domestic violence situations psychologically, and they feel like they're trapped more, we're going to go back 40, 50 years back to the issue, my guess is. And sociologically, people are predicting out, and so is psychology predicting out, that that will set us back to a point where we're going to have a lot more problems with mental health issues. I'm seeing it spike right now in terms of people getting worried about it, people trying to get out of relationships faster before this November coming into this next year, all of a sudden in the past flurry, because this is potentially coming down the pike. But for people that are listening, it is not healthier in truly bad environments to stay for the sake of the children, because there's so many reasons. One of them is that it's teaching children that you stay in relationships that are bad for you, that you don't have power and empowerment to get out. It breeds trauma, post-traumatic stress syndrome. It breeds low self-esteem. It breeds disempowerment. It breeds disenfranchising females that are children in the environment. It empowers men that are little boys who become men. It's more likely that they will repeat the offense that they're watching happen. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on. Now, in typical healthy, and I say healthy, your typical dysfunctional family, people who stay in marriages for the sake of the children and do that also doesn't necessarily bear out. But if there's no domestic violence and we're not at extremes, people make different choices for different reasons. We do know that simple bickering and simple things like that are happening and people fighting in front of each other impact children, but it doesn't mean you get divorced. But when there's those places where you have serious mental health issues going on between two adults in the house and it's impacting the children and there's no out, there's a problem. And you're staring at me like I am wrong, and I'm not wrong.
No, okay. Don't assume my positions.
Okay, so you're never quiet. You're just staring at me. Why are you staring at me?
Yeah, I'm listening.
You never just listen.
Of course I do. I always just listen.
No, this is not true.
Yeah.
So I think that it's an importance that if you have this in your life and it's going on, talk to your providers, talk to you. And it's hard for some people. I have great clients that talk to me about it, and and not everyone feels safe to talk to their primary care about it or talk, because sometimes, especially if there's children involved, you have to report it, right? So you're mandated reporter if you find out that there's domestic violence. But like in my cases, all of my clients that have that going on, they've already been reported on, or if I've had to report a 51A, like, right. So it's not that. It's more about like, how do you get the access out? Divorce is an option. The worry is that divorce won't be an option. They'll be stuck. And then the children, you don't stay together in a bad situation like that and think it's going to be good for the kids. This is not a good thing. So that was my first piece. Do you have any comments on that?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. So then the second one, and we're not going to have discussion about this at all. I didn't say you couldn't discuss it with me. I just said I'm not going into like
No, because I have to, I don't have any disagreement with anything you said. Fully on board with everything you said.
Okay, good.
But there's a tangent to this that
but
bothers me.
But that's the tangent about like him that said it. I'm sure. I'm assuming. And it's not about him. And it's not the him that probably people are thinking about.
No, I know.
I know you know, but
you talk about empowerment. It's empowering these viewpoints to this extent. This is what it smacks of to me.
It's empowering which ones?
It's empowering that viewpoint more than it's already empowered.
But it's going to become more empowered, and that's what the thing is. It's impacting.
No, it's not.
Okay. Well, we're going to disagree.
Yeah.
Because it's already showing up in my practice. So if it's showing up in my practice, it's showing up in other people's, and that's a lot of people. It's not like a small thing, right? It's not a small thing. You can't make an overarching ban on things and think it's not going to have an impact when those things were put in place to make sure that these mortality issues or other issues don't come about. Like one of the reasons why the abortion laws came in is so that we lowered the mortality rate, so that we lower the mental health issues around this, so we don't have people having access issues. Same thing for divorce. That's not the only reason for the divorce thing, but the thing about keeping kids in an environment in a bad situation, thinking that's better for them, that is not a thing. That's just not a thing. And that's not just coming up now, but it's being more feverishly pitched because it's a part of that psychological manifesto that's being put out in the environment right now about that, and it's scaring people. And so I don't think, because I don't know how it will be, I don't think that all of a sudden in the next year there's going to be some law, I don't know though, that's going to say you can't leave your marriage. But people are panicking about that. And I have a lot of people, and there's a reason why there's shelters. There's a reason why all these things are happening. And so people are worried about it because funding's going to get cut and all those things. That's not a me issue. Important to me, but that's a me issue in terms of me personally. But that relates to the fact that if people don't have somewhere to go, if they don't feel like they can leave, if there's not any access to resource, that's a problem, Okay, so moving on to the next one. You can tell me your tangent after. Okay. So the other issue that was coming up from mental health issue was the fact that having an overarching, having an overarching, oh, here goes my phone. Go to voicemail. Having an overarching ban on abortion, same kind of thing. So the access that women have, and I do have my stats here, which is why I have my thing, but we know, because we being psychologists, psychiatrists, researchers, epidemiologists, even economists, and like across the board, we know that having that happen will raise the mortality rate. And I can give you, as soon as my phone stops going to voicemail, because now I've sent this person to voicemail, I can get my stats, but it raises the mortality rate. This is not new. This was brought up within the past decade about the thought of like, if we changed any of the laws around this, right? So just so that I can be accurate with everybody. So limiting access to abortion can increase the rates for both mothers and infants. And so there was a study done last year. There's a new study too that has similar numbers, but it was done last year. I picked the one from last year, that closing abortion clinics and early gestational age limits increase mortality rate of mothers and infants, but by 6 to 15% and 38% respectively. And the Axios report that came out found that maternal mortality rates in states with abortion bans are 2.5 times more high and then that's what they say, more high. I love that times. And I'd say 2.5 times higher in 2021 than supportive states in 2018. And so there's a more recent study that even that number goes up. So if we're talking psychologically, right, if we're saying that people can't have access to resource, it changes the mental health of people and having ability to get something done. Now, if we want to talk about like, well, women's rights and all those things, okay, that's fine. But it's more about if we take resources away, it's like saying you can't see a psychologist anymore. You can't go and talk about problems because that's going to be banned as well. If we take resources away from people when they have a problem, when they have trouble, when they have stress, and you keep them stuck in an environment of disenfranchised disempowerment, what are we doing? I'm seeing it already increase in flux. I know of people already in the past couple of years that have crossed state lines with help of other people to get access to resources from the non-states that are now banning to states that have, and they're trying to now stop that from happening. So there's a flurry of this. Now, why would we want to put mental health pressure on people to make them fear-based so they can't go get access, or that they're going to be arrested, or they're going to have these things happen because they've been raped, they've had incest, something bad happens to them, they have something happen where, there's people, and there's research that will give you the numbers. There's people that go in all the time for having abortions who are married and have no more access to resources financially. And it was an oopsie, and people have their opinions about oopsies, but it's still the right of that couple to decide whether or not they have the ability to do that, or they have 2 or 3 children that have really bad medical issues, and they decide, like, people are getting, I have some of these in my practice as those are examples. What are we doing to help support? Because mental health wise, I can talk about the problems all day long and say, how does that make you feel? I already know how it's making them feel. And so it's about, why would we trap people into a space? What are we doing? And so the stress level is going up in the country. And those are just 2 of the issues that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing more as well. I mean, I'm seeing financial issues, I'm seeing all kinds of things, and it's coming from all sides, but those are particularly important to mental health of a vast majority of people in mental health field, especially with women, because they're afraid. And that's a very big deal. So people have asked me to address it from a non-political standpoint, which I'm doing. Is there's a psychological, empirically validated set of research backing the fact that these are not good concepts to be putting into law that will do anything good for physical, mental, behavioral health of women, men, and children, period, across the board. I'm going to take my sip of my bubbly. And Lou, I've never seen you so quiet in my life. People are going to comment on that.
Because there's nothing you said that there is to disagree with. It's just
I'm not looking for you to disagree with. I'm looking for you to just have conversation. Thank you, Paula. Paula in Florida, my love. No, but I'm trying.
My whole point is no one's arguing with these. Well,
that's not true.
No one. But 80% of us aren't arguing with this position.
I don't think it's 80%.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying it for fight. I'm just saying that I think there's a very large population of people who are totally on board with that. Those two, I have a list of like 10 things that people have like asked me to talk about. And it's very difficult for me to not bring in like those other pieces, because it's like, I have to make sure I have the psychological backing on them. Right. So these are 2 issues that are there, but it's a large portion of people who, when you strip away the facade of the social stigma of like what you're supposed to think and what you're supposed to say and what you're not supposed to say, at the underbelly, they actually believe that that's a better thing. And surprisingly to me, women believe in that. And it's not an overwhelm. Like I'd say 80% of women don't believe that, but maybe, but there's women who actually buy into that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, because it's like, it's the mental health issue that comes along with the strain of thinking about. The story I have in my head is about a girl that was living in Texas, that I'm familiar with. That's what I'll say. And that it was when they put in the ban, partial ban down there, and you couldn't get anything done to have, an abortion. So she had to cross state lines, and the amount of hoops she had to jump through mentally, not just the physical and the moving and getting it done and all these things, to get the actual, just the logistics of it, but then the mental toll it took on her, because she had to actively think so hard about the moral judgment that was being put on her, all the other things. Meanwhile, it was in a case where it was a very difficult case. We'll just say it was very complicated in terms of the decision that had to be made and why. And it's just like, who can come in and just say, you can't do this? It's just not, it's not mentally healthy, and it's not stabilizing. And what it's going to do is going to do exactly what happened if you go back and look at all the sociological research from back in the day about what was happening back in the 60s and in early 70s before Roe v. Wade got put into place. And we were having mortality rates that were pretty significant, and maiming of bodies and all kinds of things. We're going to end up having that happen again. And my concern is the psychological well-being, and we don't have room in practices right now. I've got a year-long wait list. Now we add in all the political psychology of all the things that might be coming, and they're already starting, and we haven't even done any turnover yet on change of seats. I'd be remiss, after being asked multiple times, can you please talk about this, to not talk about it, because I think it's so important. And then the domestic violence rate, because I put those two topics together because often they go hand in hand. Not necessarily that people are in domestic violence and are pregnant and then whatever, but they have a similar mortality rate fallout when they're restricted and resources are lacking. And then the mental health issues that come out of that are so significant. And it's very sad, because telling someone, I know how that makes you feel, or I can imagine how that makes you feel, seems so disingenuous and inauthentic, to be able to look at someone who's stuck and can't get out of their own space because a law might go into place that tells them they can't do that. That doesn't make sense. And it's really scary for people. Mm-hmm. So I'm just acknowledging it, that's very scary for people. And, it's awful. And you say, yep. Yep.
Well, yeah.
So what would you like to say, Lou? Go ahead. Just say it.
No, it's because we'd have to get into a different angle of this topic. And first of all, like Ryan asked here, I don't understand. I don't even know the background behind making divorce more difficult. I don't see a practical aim to that. So
what do you mean?
Well, you're saying someone is trying to make divorce more difficult. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why they would want to, so I don't support that. But here's the thing.
Well, want me to read the quote?
No, I'm not saying they don't.
No, I'm just going to say, I'm going to read, because it gives some of the background of what the person's thinking. Okay. This is one of the greatest tricks this is his quote. This is the person's quote. This is one of the greatest tricks that I think sexual...
Can we name the person?
Yes, J.D. Vance.
Okay.
This is one of the greatest tricks that I think the sexual revolution has pulled on the American populace. The idea like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were, I'm quoting him, so excuse all the you-knows. They were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. But so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. So that's how he starts.
Okay.
So he goes into it, it really doesn't work out for the kids, those marriages. They might've worked out. So he goes on and on and on. It just, I could go. It's a very long thing.
So I don't support any of that. Mm-hmm. Despite being on that side of the aisle, I don't support any of that. And I have problems with being lumped into that viewpoint. This is part of the political. I know, but that's where it's going.
Me lumping you in?
In general, society lumping you in with the extremes. We have, this is an 80-20 society. We listen too much to the extremes on 10% on either side, and we don't listen to the 80% in the middle.
Well,
you think more than 10% of the people believe that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I think that they wouldn't necessarily report that they do, but it's in a core belief system. I don't think here in the Northeast necessarily.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just finish his quote. J.D. Vance said, end quote, "Women are obligated to stay in violent marriages each month." And then a person, that's what his quote was. Now, I don't know and I can say, I do not know what the front line or the back line of that quote context was, but that's what he said. So the person who countered it said, each month, it was in retort to him, each month, 70 women are fatally shot by intimate partners in the U.S. under the current state. And 1 million women alive today would have been shot or shot by an intimate partner. And that's without them being forced to stay. That's a problem.
Yeah,
right. But JD Vance is pushing for, and it's not just him, but he's pushing for in his, and who knows if it's going to go, but
it's not going to go. It's obviously not going to go.
I know at this point, I never say it's obvious. Yeah. And that's the thing, is when you're in psychology, we usually go on history will repeat itself, and, history predicts the future, right? Because if people don't change, they don't change. Now, if we have a hard enough push on this, it can go. So I never say never on these things because, so people have to be prepared. So I'm speaking for the clients that are in my practice, which, I have a ton that are worried about themselves, their family members, their grandchildren coming up through, like whoever they are, and friends and family. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Talking about the fact that, well, you might say, and I'd love to say, well, it's never going to happen, but I also didn't think Roe v. Wade would be overturned, and that's a problem, because now we have all these problems, and to have a broad sweeping ban on something that takes away the rights of somebody in this country, speaking solely for this country, and the way that impacts mental health issues, mental stability of families and women and children, that's pretty significant. It's not like a small thing. And so to Ryan's question, which was, what is the purpose of making divorce more difficult? I can't speak for the people that are talking about it, obviously, but what I have read and gleaned,
obviously it's religious.
I was just going to say, it's a very extremist right Christian, couched under right Christian, because my definition of Christian isn't that, but right extreme Christian.
Thank you. Yeah.
Experience, because that's not what any Christians that I know that practice Christianity are poo-pooing this completely.
Yes.
And that's not Christianity wouldn't be espousing that in terms of what it would really say. It's not about. But it's an extreme religious stance. It's a stance of a person who's made an interpretation, who now has power potentially to come along and make some changes, and people are worried about it. Hence the thing. So the purpose would be, it's religious, but it's also to empower oneself to get their stance reinforced. So it's not about the global health of a person or a set of people. When
was this quote, by the way?
When was it?
Yeah.
Hold, please.
No, I mean recent or?
Yeah. Well, he's talked about it more recently. I don't know when that. Oh my God.
I mean, within the past 2 or 3 years, or?
Hold on.
I don't need a date. I just need an idea.
Was a week ago.
A week ago. Yes. Dumb.
No, dumb.
Huh?
So it was a week ago that it came back up again, but the original set of comments were made in 2021 by him.
Still dumb.
Okay, well, dumb or not, it's still there. And it doesn't really matter who's saying it. That's why I didn't really mention it. It was more about the concept is impacting the mental health of my clients.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't say his name, because I don't really care.
But
you could add in Bob,
but
and it doesn't matter who it is. It's a matter of like, it's to Ryan's question again, it's like the purpose is if we look at the reasoning psychologically and intellectually, it's for someone who's looking to have power over something, because it's ridiculous.
It is.
It's by nature ridiculous,
and it will not be supported.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't trust that it's not going to be supported, because Roe v. Wade was overturned.
This is a bipartisan concept in our society today, which I find amazingly annoying, again, it's the 80-20 rule. We're putting way too much emphasis on the 10% who are just talking out of their ass. I'll say it. They're talking out of their ass, and you think that 50% support the 10%, and it's not true. This is not where we are in today's society.
But if we look at
too much fear can be too much. An overemphasis of
real,
these
though,
threat
for people.
can be too much.
But it's real, though. That's why it's real for people. That's why I'm bringing it up, is because it's a real threat for people. Doesn't make so. This is like anything that someone brings up in my office. This is why I was talking about it. A fear is a fear is fear. Just, and that's why I said at the beginning, it may not be real or reasonable or realistic to me, but for people outside of me it is. And I can't say I invalidate you because I believe in the 80-20 rule. If I believed that, I would have said that Roe v. Wade absolutely never would have been overturned, and here we are.
Oh, don't get me started. First of all, I'm absolutely pro-choice. Just state this.
I know you are.
As a matter of law, in the Supreme Court considering it, it's not a right. It's just, it was incorrectly determined to be a right, and it was corrected. I think Roe v. Wade was a good statute, and I would have liked to have seen it stay, because it's opened up this can of worms for extremists to go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
But the Supreme Court, that's not the Supreme Court's job. The Supreme Court's job is to weigh it against the Constitution, and they were forced, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so offline we
The-
can have a discussion about how it's not a right, how it's not my right to have my rights over my body, or how it's not your right to have. So,
well, here's the thing.
How is it not our right?
Here's the thing. How far do your rights go constitutionally?
How come you get more rights as a man than I get as a female? Come on now.
Constitutional rights exist to the point where you're crossing somebody else's constitutional rights.
What does the Constitution say at the very beginning? We are all created to be
equal.
Right.
But your rights extend to the point where you cross someone else's rights. That's a constitutional principle.
So is it a right of a person to rape somebody?
No.
Okay, but people do it and they get away with it.
I know.
And nothing happens to them.
By the way, more of a law than a right. But yeah.
No, it's their right. It's their right, right? Because if we look at old school, men have the right to take, and there's lots of different versions of this, to take their property of their wife as property and do with them what they please. We could go with that.
Where does it say that in the Constitution?
God. Oh, not in the Constitution. I didn't say in the Constitution. Okay. I'm just saying, like, I'm
working on the Constitution basis.
Okay. Well, I'm working on all the writings that have been leading up to that. That would be poo-pooed out of the Constitution, because that's not technically a right? But people have written about that is a thing. That just because someone wrote about it doesn't make it a thing, right?
Yeah. The bottom line, I don't want to get into this discussion, because the bottom line is you have to in my opinion,
yes,
at some point in the pregnancy, you have to recognize that there's a baby involved. We can argue where that point is, right?
Yeah.
But at some point,
that's not what we're talking about.
It is, because that's the essence of Roe versus Wade.
Right, but we weren't talking about Roe v. Wade. That's a whole nother topic. We were talking about the access and resource.
You lumped it into the possibility that major things can be overturned.
Well, I'm
trying to explain why that was overturned.
Okay. But we weren't talking about that. We could talk about that, but that's a different show.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is the psychological phenomenon that it doesn't necessarily mean that just because the 80-20 rule is there, that thing won't happen. You believe that the 80-20 rule exists. I believe the 80-20 rule exists, but I've seen all of a sudden,
fallout.
I've seen this flip on its head.
The fallout for Roe versus Wade
is bad.
Which again,
not Roe versus Wade.
I like the statute of Roe v. Wade. I thought it was a reasonable benchmark.
Right. Well, now we don't have to worry about it because it's not on the table anymore.
Here's the thing, though. It was reduced to states' rights. And while there is some stuff going on now that we don't like, I give you 2 or 3 election cycles. That will all correct itself.
But 2 or 3 election cycles.
I understand people are victimized by
a huge loss of life over this. That's my point, is we're going to have a huge loss of women and children lives over that. And that's my point. And that was the concern of, it's not about the laws and all the other things that, like the pieces that you were going into. Right. And I could talk to you about that all day, but not on air.
Yeah.
But it's about, like you just said, oh, well, in a couple cycles, it will overturn and get back to like sort of like a homeostasis of like normal. That's essentially how I'm interpreting what you said. But in the meantime, if we look at the rates that they're talking about, that if there's lack of resources and or no resources and forced abortion, no abortion, or forced no getting out of marriages easily because women should stay, we're going to have a massive problem. And that was what people in my practice are bringing to me, saying, if I'm here and in my marriage and I'm having this problem, am I not going to be able to get out because I'm going to be told that I have to stay, or my children have to stay in this? And we know by research alone that the stats, and that's is only for people that are reporting. So I imagine the stats are higher psychologically, because these are psychological research reports, that there's people that are not reporting, and that the stats are higher for mortality rates or things that are happening badly to people that have these two issues going on in their life if they don't have resources. And the mental health place of that is, now I'm in a position, right? Because I'm a mandated reporter. So if I'm, in terms of like domestic violence, if I have to mandatedly report that there's domestic violence going on in the house, and the answer is to remove the children, but then the wife has to stay. I mean, it gets into this very psychologically bad spot. And so this is why the conversations are coming up, that this is why I talked about it. It's not about whose side you're on, whose side you're not, but it's about what's going to happen for people who are in these situations. What is Ryan saying? Do you feel that the children of divorced parents would be in favor of this kind of loving method? In favor of abandonment? Well, that's a very good question. So if we're looking, so his question is, do you feel that I was just reading it to myself. Do you feel that the children of divorced parents would be in favor of this kind of law being passed because they have an intrinsic fear of abandonment? So that's interesting. I know that, and you can look this up in some of the material that's been written. When we're talking about children of divorce, there's a set of things that come with children who come through divorce. When we talk about children who come through divorce because of domestic violence, there's some overlap, and then there's some additional not so great things, right? But not because of the divorce, but because of the domestic violence that was happening then that led to the divorce. My anecdotal evidence and some of my reading has shown that children who come from domestic violence and divorce will say, thank God we got out. Thank God my mother left. Thank God he's in jail. Thank God, and the abandonment is not felt. There's almost always reports of, in regular divorces, that children, depending on the age, there's an age range of different fallouts. Children report feeling more abandoned by one parent over another, or feeling attachment issues more than not. And it really depends. That's like a much more convoluted continuum of how it falls out that way, even though there's a lot of the same symptoms that come out of divorce in either scenario. But the abandonment issue is not as prevalent in my own experience clinically when it comes out of a divorce coming out of domestic. Most kids in their adulthood say, thank God it's over. It was good. Thank God we got out. No abandonment issue per se. There could be internally underneath, but in clients I've worked with that have had domestic violence as children and they've become adults and talking to me, they don't feel abandoned by the parent that got out. They don't feel abandoned by the parent who was domestic violence. They're more like, thank you very much, and you're not part of my life, and I'm abandoning you. So, and that's, case by case, I'm giving kind of like an overview of that, but nonetheless. Okay. So I have to wrap up the show because the next show is behind me and we went over. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for the great questions, and just keeping those things in mind. And I always really don't like having those conversations because it always brings up lots of stuff that doesn't need to be there. Not with you, Lou, but just more about the mental health issues. But everybody have a really great week. And next week, hopefully we'll be on a different topic, and maybe we'll have the Abby effect again.